Hi everyone, welcome back. In this lecture, we will be learning about how to install the Configuration Manager prerequest. That being said, to install the configuration prerequest, you can either install manually by following the Microsoft documentation, or you have some other third-party tools that can do the magic for you so that the required configuration can be automatically configured with the help of tool. So you could go back to this specific site, or you could check out in the comments or maybe in the description of this video, uh, and you can download. Once you download it, you can unzip the downloaded zip file, and then you have a file called exe file config mgr prerequest tool. Run as administrator, and in my case I have this smart screen protection, so I can just simply click on that button to run anyway, and then it would ask me to give yes or no for my USE. I'll accept the USE. Now I would follow the steps to install the config mgr prerequest. Normally for any of the site, like you want to install for a primary, a CAS, or secondary, you have additional key roles that needs to be installed. As a first step, what I will do is I'm going to actually install on this machine a primary site. So I would select this primary, but before that, under settings, I can add the account. So if you look at the current logged on machine, on this machine I have logged in as this is my domain name, this is my user account. So I should be able to give the same user ID password, and this is an account that has a local admin privileges on this machine, so I'll simply add, but I did not enter the password, so let me enter the password. Click on add, so that the tool has registered with the credentials. If you learn out of this video, subscribe to this channel. Subscribing won't cost you a coin, but it has extreme value to me. Subscribing may seem very small to you, but its impact is more on me. It's a vote of confidence that keeps me excited about creating more fresh, insightful content when you subscribe. Subscribing is a win-win situation. You ask any question or post any questions in the comments. As a new thread, you would be getting within 10 minutes a response back. Your support means the world to me. Thank you. Subscribe. Now it's time for us to install the roles based on the site type that we wanted to choose. For example, I wanted to choose as the primary site. Simply click on install. That is going to run all the prerequisites that can be installed. The same can be also achieved with the help of PowerShell commands, just like whatever it is trying to install now. .NET Framework 4.5 related. You could also run these commands to install the configuration. So we'll wait for a couple of minutes to automatically install all the required components, and then we would go with the role by role. Now we can see that the installation is completed, all the pre-requirements. Now it's time for us to install for the MP and DP specific role based or role specific pre-requirements. So you can see here what are the components it got installed. For example, here bits and RDC. These are the things it got installed. Now let's actually go to the roles, and on a local machine we would like to install the management point specific. Let's see. And it's going to validate all these pre-requirements, which are in fact it got already installed as part of the primary site installation. But if any other components that are not installed, it's going to install. For example, here RSAT bit server, it's going to install, and it got success. Now it's going to install the web WMI. So the major advantage with this tool is, as you can see here, instead of you go to the server manager and install each and every role, this is going to install all the pre-required components automatically for you. This way you could actually achieve without missing any pre-requirements quickly. One other main advantage with this tool would be you could actually install on a remote machine straightforward from here, because if you remember a couple of minutes back we actually given account details. So by using that account details, you should be able to install remotely also. Now all the required components got installed. Similarly, you should be able to look for DP. So before I go to DP, you can look at what all the IIS components that you need to take out. Okay, and now for the DP, we can say click on install. Mostly the required DP components by this time it has already available. But if you look at the file server specific, which is missing, so let's install that. And we could see that most of the components that are required, close to 24 different components, got already installed. The last one is web scripting tools is needed. So it is also getting installed. So all the required components got installed for distribution point. So click on finish, and on the same primary side, I'm going to install other roles, for example, application get log point. So you could, look into what are the required components that needs to be enabled. It's going to enable automatically. As you can see, all the required components are getting installed. Though similarly, I have to do additional steps to be performed for state migration point and enrollment point, and these are the additional components that I have to install. So I'm going to repeat all of these steps. It just finished for application catalog. Let's also install for the state migration point, or SMP. So this is a role will be used in terms of migrating the user profiles. So when I talk about the user profiles, like we are going to install on we're going to install definitely USMT tool, user state migration tool, which is part of Windows ADK. And once you install that tool followed by the role, then all the components, all the documents that are exist under C:users. For example, on this machine I log in as a SCCM admin, so all the data that is existing within this will be migrated, meaning, for example, my favorites, or my desktop documents, or my documents, or if you want to migrate even some of the files and folders from a C drive, that is also possible in terms of migration. This is called the state migration point role. So we would be discussing that as part of the operating system deployment. So I'll just close this. I have a plan to use that. That's why I'm going to install even for enrollment point. Mostly these are the things will be already available by this time. A proxy point also, same thing. It just checks whether we have all the components or not. Similarly, certificate registration point, it should be there, no change. If you see, all the components are already available, that's why it's showing as a no change. So we install almost all the roles required. And now directory specific, let's say if you want to even extend the schema, container creation, all of that also can be done from here, but I don't want to do it this way because I wanted to show how to perform these things, right? And ADK, so now I need to install the ADK, which is a pre-requirement even. So I'll simply click on load. So this is gonna go to Microsoft site, ADK site, and it will actually pull up the latest ADK. If you see here, ADK, the current version, which is 22H2, which is the very latest, and we can click on load. So this is going to actually download here in this path, C:\Windows temp, and later point it's going to install. So this might take some time. Now when we click on continue, it's going to start an installation process in the backend. So I'll pause this video for a couple of minutes. Once we have installed this, we would be installing the WinPE add-in also. This is additional WinPE specific component that needs to be installed. So I'll wait for a minute to complete this entire installation. Now the installation is completed. We need to perform the restart of the system to complete the installation. I'm not going to do it right away, I know. Let's do the WinPE installation also. It's downloaded because this is a simple ADK file. Followed by the installation would happen. So let me show you that how it looks like. So you could see this is the WinPE file, this is the ADK file. What it does is it actually installs the ADK. So let's wait for a couple of minutes to complete the WinPE add-in. Now we have successfully completed ADK WinPE version also. You can download Configuration Manager Evolution copy by searching for Configuration Manager Evolution download, and it would point to this website. So the latest version as on date would be the 23, that's a 2023 year, 03 is the March. So that's where the current branch or you call it as earlier Endpoint Manager, Configuration Manager, has been renamed to Microsoft Configuration Manager. So now the product completely renamed to Microsoft Configuration Manager. This was expected. It was announced early October somewhere in 2022 as the brand name is going to change, and now it has changed to Configuration Manager officially, and that's where the new version got released. So this is the version I'm going to download by click on this. So it would initiate the download process. As you can see here, close to 1.2 GB it has to download. I would simply pause for a minute and then we would continue post download. The evolution copy has been downloaded. We could actually go back to close this simply and go back to, oops, many things got opened up. So let me go to downloads folder. As we can see, the new download is actually showing as MCM. That is nothing but instead we used to call as SCCM, now you should be calling as MCM. So Microsoft Configuration Manager, which has even config mgr also. So simply run this tool. It's going to extract basically the entire content in a self-extracted mode. So let's wait for that. It's asking for UAC, so let's accept that UAC, and then it's gonna extract under downloads folder for me. So I would put it as EMCM and a small. Let's extract. So as you could see here, it has just created this folder, and a folder got created called cd.retail.ln, and all the content is getting extracted within this. So this is the source. By using this source, we should be able to install Configuration Manager latest version. Post to this, any of the new updates, for example, as I said earlier, this is a version of 2023 with the March month, right? So let's say if it is a 2024, maybe a March, there could be some updates are coming up because every year 2 releases it would follow. So on a March it has released. Now you could expect somewhere in the August a new version of config mgr, and then in that situation you would be upgrading directly from the in console. So within the console you have an option to upgrade. So this is a configuration. Now we have the retail CD, so I would put it into my downloads folder only, and I would like to start from installing directly from here. Now we would go for the SQL installation. So this is where we have to configure SQL, but before that we actually have to install a SQL database. So let's actually perform the SQL installation from SQL Media. And later point we would install the WSS. We don't want to install before WSS because we wanted to ensure the database must be selected as a SQL database. So as a order should be followed. Once you complete all of these, install the SQL Server. So I would simply close this for now, and I'll do a quick reboot, and then I'll come back to the same window and perform the SQL installation. So if you're thinking about what kind of SQL version you need to have, so look at this document. So it's very simple. If you're trying to install the primary side, you definitely need the standard edition or enterprise edition of the SQL Server. So the difference between standard and enterprise, when to go, is a key, right? If you have more end users or the devices that you wanted to manage, definitely you would choose the enterprise edition, because going to the enterprise edition, it will extend the number of clients that is going to support it on a configuration manager. But normally you would find out either standard edition or enterprise edition. That is for the primary sites which I'm talking about, including the CAS and the primary site. But if you're trying to install the secondary site, you no need to have a standard or enterprise. Instead, you can actually have fun with the Express edition. So if you're looking for the Express edition, so yes, it's going to support starting from 2012 to all the editions as on date. It's going to support it, the Express editions. But now, my friends, think about the primary site and secondary site. What is that you're going to have the minimum SQL edition? So the minimum one would be SQL Server 2012 as on this date. But again, how to how can I identify this SQL server is supported or not? So that all depends on the life cycle of the SQL server. I'm talking about the life cycle. Life cycle is something that Microsoft would always maintains. If a product got released or generally available for the public or for their customers, they would come up with a life cycle. This is going to support all these days. After that, this product is not going to support it. That's how they start the life cycle, and that's where it's going to end. For example, if you see here, this is going to depreciated from starting July 2021, and this is a version 2015. So these are the some of the life cycle. If you want more information about the other products life cycle, you can always search from the Microsoft.com/lifecycle. That's gonna take out to this URL, or visit this URL and search by product. This is where, for example, SQL. So it's going to talk about SQL, what is the version you are planning. Maybe you might be authorized to have some SQL version. So you can look into this. This how it's gonna support it. In case if you apply the service pack 3, it's gonna extend. If you're not applying service pack, it's gonna depreciate. These are the additional thing which I just covered, but let's actually look at what is that's gonna you would be using in your case. I always recommend, since you're going for the current branch, which is the latest edition of Configuration Manager, then always go for the latest SQL version, because that's going to give you more life cycle in terms of the possibilities that it's going to offer you when you're trying to upgrade, right, the Configuration Manager. So I would definitely encourage you to look at this document. This is gonna explain you whether the standard or enterprise edition can support CAS or primary or secondary sites. Ideally, this is going to support up to SQL Server 2012. It's going to support it, because this is going to expire on a fixed life cycle that's going to show up here. So if I just go back here, SQL Server 2012, so it's going to extend it till 2022. But if you applied extended security update 1 year, it's going to support. These are the extended additional release. So these are the additional patch kind of thing that is available. That's why it is supported all these days. Otherwise, it's not going to support it. And the other important one would be, when you're trying to install, let's say you're trying to install maybe SQL Server 2016, then you might have to install some of the cumulative updates. So look at the cumulative updates that are needed for this. So in this case, if it is documented, like you can use this version with a minimum service pack and the cumulative updates supported by SQL Server Lifecycle. So that means the minimum one that you need to install. So we would recommend, for example, 2017, you need to have CU version 2 or higher, so that it actually extends the life cycle. Just like this, if you have go and check these, so it is actually extending the life cycle, right? So similarly here, the version should follow the latest CU also. So that being said, let me go back to the SQL Server which we are going to install on this machine. So in my case, I'm going to use the SQL Server 2019 because I'm going to cover later point in different videos the upgradation from 2019 to 2022, followed by the Configuration Manager upgrade path also. That's why I wanted to go one level below. Later point, I would be applying the latest CU. So first step, I need to install the SQL. So I just inserted the media here. You can see. I'll simply click on setup. This is an evolution copy, so I don't need to give a CD key or product key. And we can see that this is the SQL Server installation. You can click on install. We will be installing the new SQL Server in a standalone mode. We just click on that. As I said, it is an evolution copy. Just in case if you have a product key, you can enter here. Remember that it's gonna give me a warning on a SQL specific firewall ports to be allowed. So I would be doing that later point. So let's proceed with the installation for now. And I have to choose SQL specific database engine. This is going to install all the database. So just in case if you're trying to install somewhere else, you can always change these directories. For example, in my case, I wanted to go with E drive. That's where I have 1 TB space. So I would be clicking on that. So all the path goes to the E drive. And this is an instance name. By using this instance name, we should be able to connect to the SQL Server, including the config.mgr also will use this instance name. So in my case, I'm gonna choose that. In the server configuration, we need to configure a service account that's gonna start it. So if you look at here, this is a service that's gonna create it as part of the SQL Server installation. So that is a SQL Server agent as well as a database. And this is the service. This service will run with this account, so which is not recommended. So we need to have a domain account to be created. It's a simple domain account to be created, and it should start with that account user ID and password based, and you need to follow that service account principles, like you should be making that the service account shouldn't be logging to any of the computer, such kind of permissions to be granted. So for that, I would actually create a simple account. I'll show you here. I would go back to my users, and under users I should have some OU called service accounts. So svc dot sccm sql. So this is a service account that I'm creating. So I'll simply enter a username as this, followed by the I would definitely set a password, strong password, and I don't want to change the password in the next logon, but instead I would say password never expires. And I would manually change this password every 90 days. That is the configuration we would put it. And also we will make sure that we'll create a group policy saying that we do not allow this icon to log on to any of the computer. So I would actually go back to now configuration manager server. I simply give here by browsing drop down, give here svc dot and the check. So it will appear. Same thing here also. You can actually perform browse svc dot, and this is the account that is both the accounts are going to run on this. And make sure that you would be taking this granting permission. And now if you look at here, this is where the password was hiding. So this service account will start, that SQL Server agent service will start with this account. This is where you need to give the password. So in my case, whatever the password I have entered during the creation of the account, I would give it here. And then collation is a key here. Collation is like the characters that are gonna write in your database. So sometimes some kind of special characters might not be able to allowed in that database, right? So inventory is getting collected, or if some application is writing some data in that different format, it might not be compatible. So that's why Microsoft recommends by use the default collation, which is Latin 1 general cp1 underscore ci as. This is the collation that needs to be used for the database. You don't need to select anything additional. Simply choose that and make sure that both the services are in the automatic, and click on next. If the password is correct, you would be able to proceed further. Otherwise, you cannot go. Okay, now this is where it's going to talk about the authentication. Microsoft recommends to go with the Windows authentication mode, and from the database point of view. So if you just look at here, I need to add here. So if I just maximize, I would you would be able to see here. You need to add here a current user account. Along with that, the account that needs to have a full permissions on SQL. For example, I have the SQL database admins team, so I might add here the SQL DBA team group ID. For example, domain admins example. These are the people that needs to have a full permission on the database, or maybe this SCCM admins needs to have a full permission on the database. So we would add that group here, followed by the data directories. So everything is going to go to E drive. This is where the temp database, that is what we are going to create here. So ideally for the database, there are a couple of recommendations that we would normally follow. We might need to add this directory completely to a different drive in the production. But these things you would definitely get it from your SQL DB admin, because they are the key here to configure your SQL database. But ideally, just in case if you are the one person who have to configure, you could choose as a default. That's okay. It's going to work for you. It's not going to do any harm. And memory, this is have to be configured to minimum and a maximum as per the Microsoft recommendation. Minimum as a 8 GB, maximum you have to set some value for that, which we would be doing with the pre-request tool in a minute. And file stream, we are not going to do any kind of file streaming, so we'll simply click on next to proceed. This is where it will show based on all of your selection. This is what it gives you, a consolidated view or summary. Let's begin to install. This process might take a couple of minutes to complete the installation, so I would pause the video for you. SQL installation is completed. You can close this window, and it's time for us to install the latest CU. So we install the SQL 2019. So SQL 2019 specific download. So we would be downloading the latest cumulative update for the SQL Server 2019. The latest version is, as in recording of this, is 2022 specific release. So that is a 22 SQL cumulative update. So I'll simply click on download. That's going to download in a minute here. The download has completed. Let's open up this and run the installation. SQL Server cumulative update installation is very straightforward installation. It doesn't require you to be a great options chooser. So click on next to install. As a first step, it's going to extract to somewhere into the large drive. So in this case, it's actually extracting to the E drive. This is where it got extracted. All the media comes here, and then the installation will start. All these steps are automatic. You just have to accept the license terms, and this is a version that's going to upgrade it. So it's going to check in case any of the SQL service or maybe database is in a use case, it's going to stop it if found. So let me show you something here in the services.msc. So SQL, this is a service that we got installed with the service account, and these two got in a automatic mode. Click on next, update. This is going to install the cumulative update. That means it's going to update the SQL version to the latest cumulative update, and then we are ready to go back to our tool to configure WSS and database optimization, all other stuff. Just in case if you're trying to install even SQL Studio Management, you can actually download that too. So I would be downloading simultaneously SQL Server Management Studio. So this version always keep on changing, so make sure that you have a latest version. So being the latest version, the updates or all of that stuff, it might help you. So it's actually downloading. So SQL cumulative update has been successfully installed. We'll close this. So in the backend, I also downloaded SQL Server Management Studio. So this is a tool that's going to help you to connect. So SQL Server got installed, but you cannot connect to the SQL Server without having SQL Server Management Studio. So this is the interface that will be useful you to connect to the SQL Server. So I would simply download this tool by using this link here, and then followed by the installation. So double click on that. It's a straightforward installation. Click on install. That's going to install the Studio Management. The installation is very straightforward. As we can see, the installation is completed. I will close all these windows and open up. It's recommended to actually restart because we just installed the SQL Server. So I'm going to do a quick restart. I'll log in, and if I open up the tool that we are using for the config mgr pre-request tool, let's go back to this tool and re-add the account from a settings. Would simply add here with the password, continuing with the configuration for the SQL Server. So as you can see here, we need to specify the minimum and maximum SQL memory allocation. What happens is, once you configure this in the backend, if you just open up the SQL Server Management Studio by using this tool, as I said earlier, you could connect to SQL Server, right? So in the backend, it's gonna, as you can see, we can connect to this tool, the Studio Management, and in the properties of the SQL Server, this is a server, right? So within this, you have the memory. So within this, if you see here, the minimum is 0. That means whatever the minimum is available, that is it is going to use. But always SQL is an application that is a memory hungry hungry application, meaning it's going to use up to 2 TB. That's what currently configured. We didn't configure, but this is the default configuration. So with this default configuration, what happens is it will go beyond the configuration up to 2 TB. So we don't want to use that, right? So we wanted to limit that. Either you go to the properties of the SQL Server manually and configure here as the 8 GB, or you could use this tool and simply set configure. So this is going to configure. Okay, we need to connect to the SQL Server. So from the source, from a connections, so connect. So this is where you have to give the SQL Server information. So in this case, we have given here host name. This is a host name. Let me ping. So it will ping with the FQDN name. So this name to be given. It got failed because we didn't give any name. So let me give here and say instance name. If you remember, we gave the default instance. Just in case if you forget the instance name, you can always go back to the services.msc and then find out with the SQL Server, and you see here in the brackets it has given the instance name, which is MS SQL Server. This is the default instance name. So in my case, I no need to give this instance name because it's a default, so it's an optional. So I'll simply click on connect. It's going to connect successfully. Now it's time for me to go back to the SQL Server and say configure. Now it's going to successfully configure these services. So that means you need to have the physical memory also, at least 8 GB, and then you should be able to configure. So this memory configuration is really optimized. So you might have to configure minimum and the maximum it's gonna use as part of the configuration. So once you have done this, you could actually restart the SQL Server or the SQL services so that the real configuration gets applied. Okay, now it's time for us to go to the WSUS and install. So you could see here I'm going to use the WSUS server and say install. So this is going to install my WSUS role, as well as it's going to configure for the SQL Server as a database in the backend. So that concludes all the prerequisite installation on this server. So once we have installed this WSUS, all of that stuff, so we would go with the post installation and we would configure manually all this optional content. So these steps to be performed after installation. The installation is completed successfully. You could also configure here the post-installation configuration simply by configure. So this is where the folder gonna created called WSUS content. So let's say configure. So it says that the directory does not exist. So we need to create the directory. So I would say browse and simply create in C drive. Click on configure. Now we could see that post installation configuration is successfully completed. So some configuration is done for the WSUS, I would say. So we have performed almost everything here within this except the schema extension, which we would be doing. So let's give it a try here, even the schema extensions also. It's time for us to validate whether the SQL Server specific memory is properly configured or not. So you could actually go to the properties of this, or before that, do a quick refresh and go to the properties, and you can see here the memory is properly configured with this tool. That's good. Now it's time for us to check and validate the collation, just in case if it is not as expected. And the next step would be the database creation. So you could create a database. So the database would be created with the site name. So in our case, if we are trying to install with a PO1 site, we would create the database with a PO1. In my case, I would like to give this as the lab, LAB, and the capitals. And number of cores that are gonna available for this would be at least 2 databases. I mean, this database would use more CPUs. You could see here total 6 processors I have. That's why it's showing as more processors, but this tool is actually not pulling, so I'm actually dedicatedly giving 4 cores CPUs. And the initial database that's going to create is 1 GB, and let's say create. This is going to create a database. So if I just go back here and under databases, so it just created cm_lab. So that's what it says. So database is successfully created. Now for the SRS, We need to install even SRS is an application that you manually have to download SRS. So let's go to the SQL reporting services. So this is the software. Again, this is additional server software. You need to have a license for this again. So in my case, I'm gonna download and install an evolution copy, which would take a couple of minutes to download. Open up that window, the latestly downloaded file, and then start installing the SQL reporting services. This is where if you have a product key, you would be entering. In my case, I'm going to use a free edition. So click on next, install. This is going to install the reporting services. I'll close the backend windows. Once the reporting service is installed, we should be able to configure a reporting services database also. It has installed. Once we close that, we should be able to even configure directly from reporting server configuration manager. So when you click on this, it's going to connect, and then it will start asking you to run the configuration wizard. For example, this is a service account that's going to use, and web URL and the database. Just in case, if you see here, there's no database, that means you have to create it. So we would be simply clicking on a change database, create a new database, and this is a server which we are going to connect it. Report server, that's a database name. It's going to come up and create. Let's say finish. This is going to create that reporting database. So SQL reporting services will be accessible over the web. So meaning the web portal also to be configured. So which would automatically ideally comes here by web portal. You should be able to see here the virtual directory, all of that stuff. And then you could also configure just in case email integration, all of that stuff. So I'll simply close this for now, and we would look into SQL reporting services during the database or during the report section. We should be able to work on it, but for now the database has been created. SQL reporting services is partially configured, and we would work on this later point. Let's exit this and go back to this window. So we worked with the database. We create the database, we install the SQL reporting services, and also database got created. So if I just refresh here, the database should be available here, like reporting services as well as the reporting services temp DB. Both has been created during the reporting server configuration wizard. Now we have everything within the SQL. Now it's time for us to perform the directory services specific pre-request, like extending the schema and also creating a container and also granting the permissions on the container. So instead of performing these three things from this tool, I would like to show you as there is a bug within this tool at this point of time. We cannot validate with the extended, or we cannot give the alternative credentials. Seems to be there's a bug. So I would like to perform schema extension and container creation and granting the permissions for the systems management container from a domain controller. And also I would have to log in on this domain controller as the schema admin. So the current logon, which has the schema admin permissions. So all I have to do is I have to copy or map the drive. So let me map it. I would like to map the network drive location. So on a SCCM server, we have source is available, config mgr source. So I would just like to map it instead of copying. Go back to users. Somewhere I have logged into SCCM admin, and then under downloads, the folder. This is the folder. Within this folder, you have a bin. Within x64, you have extending schema extension. So exadch is the tool that you need to run with the administrator. So whatever the content is available, I need to copy this content to my C drive and execute, or I can run from the network. But the recommended method would be always executed from a local machine. So I would definitely follow the recommended method. So like I'm just copying here and open up a command prompt with the administrative rights and navigate to the location where you have copied. In my case, I have copied to ccolon.temp dir. If you could see here the extension AD. So I'll simply execute this. It says that there is additional files are not available. So I need to copy and this copy DLL, all of that to be copied. So additional 2-3 files were missing. So instead of that, I can simply run directly from the network map location. So let's quickly either copy all those files or run it from a network location. So in my case, I'm gonna run from the network location quickly, because instead of copying each and every file, that might take some time for me. I thought to show you, but instead of copying the entire source, so I'll just say run as administrator. What would happen is it's gonna execute the complete exe file, and it will create an log file with the same name on the C drive called extad schema. So this is a file it has created, and if you see here, there are close to 18 different attributes that has been created within the container. So if the container should be ready, so we did not create the container, we are going to create a container called systems management container. So once the container is created, all these values can be populated if really required. To populate that, you need to have rights. So here a couple of things. First thing is you need to have a container called systems management container, and also you need to have these attributes should be available by extending that exe file. Second thing is SCCM server will come up and write some values within these attributes. For example, if you look at ms-sms-mp, mp name will be come up here, mp address will come up here, site boundaries information will come up, site code that we are gonna choose in this lab as LAB. So that lab LAB site code will come up here. So all that will fit it here. So that for fitting, you need to have the permission. So that's what we are gonna create now. So I just close all these and make sure that open up the Active Directory users in computer. Click on View Advanced Features. If you have not selected, click on Advanced Features. And then under system, you need to have a systems management container. So this container can be created in two different ways. The option one would be the using the ADSID tool, and also you should be able to even use another option for the LDI input method, but I would be using the easiest method for you, ADSID. So this is a tool that gets installed. You need to connect with a default naming context and browse to system and right click new object. Try to choose here as a container and they give the name as the systems management. So I would type as system management. This is the value. M should be capital, S should be capital. So it should be the same characters, same way. There should be a gap between system and management. Click on create, finish. Now system management got created. Either you can close or you could go to the properties and grant the permissions, or you could actually go back to the Active Directory users in computer and refresh. Now you should be able to see system management container. So under properties of this, you can grant the permission. So simply advanced. This is where you could add an account that has a full permission. So in my case, I have a computer account. I should be able to choose, in this case, inhyd-cm01. This is the computer name. That should have a full permission for this object as well as all the child objects. That is nothing but this object and all descendant objects. Click OK by choosing the full control. So that way you'll have a full control. But in production, if you have a multiple sites, it's difficult for you to grant server by server and removing that server just in case if you don't want, right? So it's difficult. So instead, you could actually create a group, just like a group called all SCCM servers, and add the server here. In my case, the computer name inhyd-cm01, and choose the object as the computer. And once the computers, like you have a cache site or secondary site, primary, secondary, all of that servers can be added here. So you maintain only this group, and this group you would be adding to systems management container as a full permission. So just go to the properties, repeat the same steps. Instead of adding the computer name, you could actually add this group name. It's a full permission, and then this object should be the second one, this object and all descendant objects. Click OK, apply, apply. So what would happen is, in the future, if you have any computer that's gonna you want to make as the primary or secondary site, you would be adding that to there, and the site code information would be populated. How it's going to populate under system management is, we did look into this log file. So within the system management container, the schema has been extended so that all this information gets filled when we install the configuration manager, and then configuration manager come up and it will look for the system management container, and then it try to put all these values. Some of them are visible for you, some of them are not. Okay, let's log into config mgr server and validate what other options are left over. So we installed all the site roles, and we also performed schema extension, container creation, and we granted the permission. We also installed ADK. Along with ADK, we also installed the PE version add-on, and then sequence server we installed. We ensured the collation model is proper. We created a database with a lab name. We installed the SRS. We partially configured SRS. I know we would be doing that during the role enable SQL reporting services point role, and we also installed the WSS role, and we performed the WSS post configurations also. Of course, to perform all of this stuff, we have chosen settings, and we connected our SQL server as well as the source, all of that stuff, right? So that being said, we will end up here for pre-request, and in the next lecture we would start installing the config mgr. If you learn out of this video, subscribe to this channel. Subscribing won't cost you a coin, but it has extreme value to me. Subscribing may seem very small to you, but its impact is more on me. It's a vote of confidence that keeps me excited about creating more fresh, insightful content when you subscribe. Subscribing is a win-win situation. You ask any question or post any questions in the comments. As a new thread, you would be getting within 10 minutes a response back. Your support means the world to me. Thank you. Subscribe.